Hello, everybody, and welcome to my presentation about the basic history of video games. The birth of the video game industry. The first ever video game console was the Magnavox Odyssey, released in 1972, created by Ralph Baer. The Magnavox Odyssey never caught on with the public, due largely to the limited functionality of its primitive technology. By the middle of the 1970s, however, the ball and paddle craze in the arcade had ignited public interest in video games and continuing advances in integrated circuits had resulted in large-scale integration of LSI microchips cheap enough to be incorporated into a consumer product. In 1978, it was the golden age of arcades. Considered this is the Magnavox Odyssey. The golden age of arcades. Space Invaders was a popular game during the golden age. The game introduced many elements which would become standard in video games. While video games had been introduced to Japan soon after hitting the United States, the Japanese arcade industry had remained primarily focused on electromechanical driving and shooting games and a type of slot machine called the metal game that accepted and paid out in medals instead of currency as not to be classified as a gambling game. Games such as Galaxian, Galaga, and Donkey Kong were popular in arcades during the early 1980s. Now let's get to the great video game crash of 1983. At the end of 1983, several factors, including a market flooded with poor quality games, the commercial failure of several important Atari 2600 titles, and home computers emerging as a new and more advanced gaming platform, caused the industry to experience a severe downturn. This was the crash of the video games industry. It bankrupted several companies that produced North American consoles and games from late 1983 to early 1984. It ended what is considered to be the second generation of console video gaming. As a result of the crash, a globally important video gaming industry emerged in Japan, creating important room for companies like Nintendo and Sega. This brought about the worldwide popularity of the third-generation Nintendo Entertainment System, for which third-party game publishing was strictly overseen by Nintendo. The 16-bit era of consoles. The 16-bit generation of video game consoles started in the late 1980s. The TurboGrafx 16/PC engine debuted in 1987 as the first commercial 16-bit game system. It had a large following in Japan, but did very poorly in North America and Europe because of its limited library of games and because of the excessive distribution restrictions imposed by Hudson Soft. Sega's Mega Drive or Genesis sold well. The Mega Drive/Genesis sold well worldwide early on after its debut in 1988. Nintendo responded with its own next-generation system named the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or SNES. In 1990, the 1990s were a decade of marked innovation in video gaming. It was a decade of transition from raster graphics to 3D graphics and gave rise to genres of video games including first-person shooter, real-time strategy, and MMO. Handheld gaming began to become more popular through the decade, thanks in part to the release of the Game Boy in 1989. Arcade games experienced a resurgence in the early to mid-1990s, followed by a decline in the late 1990s as home consoles became more common. As arcade games declined, the home video game industry matured into a more mainstream form of entertainment in the 1990s, but their video games also become more and more controversial because of their violent nature, especially in games of Mortal Kombat, Night Trap, and Doom, leading to the formation of the Interactive Digital Software Association and the rating games by sending them their ESRB's ratings since 1994. Now let's enter the third dimension. 3D computer graphics using polygons were soon popularized by Yu Suzuki Sega AM2. Games Virtua Racing 1992 and Virtua Fighter 1993. Some of the Sony Computer Entertainment or SCE staff involved in the creation of the original PlayStation video game console credit Virtua Fighter as inspiration for the PlayStation 3D graphics hardware. The PlayStation was originally being considered as a 2D focused hardware, and it wasn't until the success of Virtua Fighter in the arcades that they decided to design the PlayStation as a 3D focused hardware. However, with the advent of 32 and 64-bit consoles in the mid-1990s, Home video game consoles such as the Sega Saturn, PlayStation, and Nintendo 64 also became able to produce texture-mapped 3D graphics. Increasing numbers of players waited for popular arcade games to be ported to consoles rather than pumping coins into arcade kiosks. This trend increased with the introduction of more realistic peripherals for computer and console game systems such as force feedback, aircraft joysticks, and racing wheel pedal kits, which allowed home systems to approach some of the realism and immersion formerly limited to arcades. To remain relevant, arcade manufacturers such as Sega and Namco continued pushing the boundaries of 3D graphics beyond what was possible in homes. By 1998, however, Sega's new console, the Dreamcast, could produce 3D graphics on par with the Sega Naomi arcade machine. Sega eventually stopped making consoles. Now let's enter the realm of PC gaming. The increasing computing power and decreasing cost of processors of the Intel 8386, Intel 8486, and the Motorola 68330 caused the rise of 3D graphics and multimedia abilities through sound cards and CD-ROMs. Early 3D games began with flat shading graphics like Elite, Starlighter 2, or Alpha Waves, and then simple forms of texture mapping. 1989 and early 1990 saw the release and spread of the multi-user dungeon, or MUD, codebases DQMUD and LPMUD, leading to a tremendous increase in the proliferation and popularity of MUDs. Before the end of the decade, the evolution of the genre continued through graphical MUDs to the first massively multiplayer online playing games, or MMORPGs, which freed users from the limited number of simultaneous players in other games and brought persistent world to the mass market. And in the early 1990s, shareware distribution was a popular method of publishing games for smaller developers, including then-fledgling companies such as Apogee, now 3D Realms, Epic Mega Games, now Epic Games, and id Software. This gave consumers the chance to try a trial portion of the game, usually restricted to the game's complete first section or episode. Before purchasing the full game, racks of games on single 5.25 foot, and later 3.5 foot floppy disks were common in computer stores, often only costing a few dollars each. The shareware versions were essentially free. The cost only needed to cover the disk and packaging. Now let's enter the sixth generation of consoles. Released in 2000 was Sony's PlayStation 2 or PS2, which featured DVD-based game disc with 4.7GB capacity, increased processor and graphics ability over its predecessor, including progressive scan component video connections, built-in 4-player connection, available Ethernet adapter, which came in built-in with the 2004 release of the slimline PS2 cases, and the ability to play DVD movies and audio CDs, eliminating the need for a separate DVD player and making the PS2 a complete home entertainment console. The console was highly successful. Nintendo followed a year later with the GameCube. While it had the component video ability of its contemporaries, the GameCube suffered in several ways compared to Sony's PS2. First, the PS2's high anticipation and 1-year head start gained player and developer attention before the GameCube's release. As a result, the GameCube had less third-party support. The GCN's game disc capacity was third of that of a PS2's full-size DVD discs, forcing a few games to be released on multiple discs and most titles to compromise on texture quality and other features of GameCube games, when other platforms have no such limitations on their versions. Lastly, the GameCube was hindered by a reputation for being a kid's console due to its initial launch color scheme and lack of mature content games, which the current market appeared to want, though the T and M-rated titles did exist on the GameCube. Almost all GameCube games were either E-rated, and mostly cartoon style in their art design. Before the end of 2001, Microsoft Corporation entered the console market with the Xbox. The console used a great deal of its PC technology to leverage its internal development, making PC easily portable to the Xbox. Shortly after its release in November 2001, Bungie Studios' Halo Combat Evolved instantly became the driving point of the Xbox's success, and the Halo series became one of the most successful console shooter franchises of all time. By the end of the generation, the Xbox had run even with the Nintendo GameCube in sales globally, but since nearly all of its sales were in North America, it pushed Nintendo into third place in the American market. Now let's go to the mobile games. In the early 2000s, mobile games had gained mainstream popularity in Japanese mobile phone culture, years before the United States or Europe. By 2003, a wide variety of mobile games were available on Japanese phones, ranging from puzzle games and virtual pet titles that use camera, phone, and fingerprint scanner technologies to 3D games with PlayStation quality graphics. Older arcade-style games became very popular on mobile phones, which were an ideal platform for arcade-style games designed for shorter play sessions. Namco began making attempts to introduce mobile gaming culture to Europe in 2003. Now let's go to the seventh generation. The generation opened early for handheld consoles, as Nintendo introduced their Nintendo DS and Sony premiered the PlayStation Portable, or the PSP, within a month of each other in 2004. While the PSP boasted superior graphics and power following a trend established in the mid-1980s, Nintendo gambled on a lower power design but featuring a novel control interface. The DS's two screens proved extremely popular with consumers, especially young children and middle-aged gamers, who were drawn to the devices by Nintendo, Nintendogs, and Brain 8 series respectively. The PSP attracted a significant portion of veteran gamers in North America and was very popular in Japan, though a large portion of its visual novels and anime-based games have never been localized in the West. This combined allowed Nintendo to continue its dominance in handheld gaming. Nokia withdrew their N-Gage platform in 2005, but reintroduced it as introduced the brand as a game-oriented service for high-end smartphones on April 3, 2008. In console gaming, Microsoft stepped forward first in November 2005 with the Xbox 360, and Sony followed in 2006 with the PlayStation 3, setting the technology standard for the generation. Both featured high-definition graphics over HDMI connections, large hard disk-based secondary storage for saved games and downloaded content, integrated networking, and a companion online gameplay and sales platform with Xbox Live and the PlayStation Network respectively. Both were formidable systems that were the first to challenge personal computers in power at launch, while the Xbox 360 enjoyed a substantial price edge, selling for either $300 or $400, depending on model, while the PS3 launched with models priced at $500 and $600, coming with Blu-ray disc and Wi-Fi. PlayStation 3 was the most costly game console on the market since Panasonic's version of the 3DO, which retailed for a little under $700. Now let's enter the Wii era. In this generation, Nintendo not only secured its dominance in the handheld video game market, but also successfully regained total dominance in both the home video game market and the entire video game industry with the release of its home console, the Wii. While the Wii had lower technical specifications than both the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, only a modest improvement over the GameCube and the only 7th-gen console not to offer HD graphics, its new motion control was much touted. Its lower price point of around $200 to $250 appeals to a much larger demographic, and took cues from PC gaming and their crafted games that capitalized on the intuitive nature of motion controls. Emphasis on gameplay turned comparatively simple games into unlikely runaway hits, such as Wii Sports Resort, Wii Fit. Many gamers, publishers, and analysts initially dismissed the Wii as an underpowered curiosity, but were surprised as the console sold out through the 2006 Christmas season and to remain so through the next 18 months, becoming the fastest-selling game console in most of the world's gaming markets. As a result, the Wii became a global success and the runaway market leader of the 7th generation of consoles. As of December 2013, the Wii has sold 103 million units worldwide and is currently, as of 2020, the Nintendo's best-selling home console. Now let's go into the 8th generation. The PlayStation 4 or PS4 is a video game console from Sony Computer Entertainment, built as the successor to the PlayStation 3. PlayStation 4 was officially announced at a press conference on February 20th, 2013, the fourth home console in Sony's PlayStation series. It was launched on November 15th, 2013 in North America and on November 29th, 2013 in Europe, and was launched on February 22nd, 2014 in Japan. Moving away from the cell architecture, the PlayStation 4 is the first in the Sony series to feature compatibility with the x86 architecture, specifically x86-64, which is a widely used platform common in many modern PCs. The idea is to make video game development easier on the next generation console, attracting a broader range of developers, large and small. These changes highlight Sony's effort to improve upon the lessons learned during the development, production, and release of the PS3. Other notable hardware features of the PlayStation 4 include 8 GB of GDDR5 RAM memory and a faster Blu-ray drive. The Xbox One is a video game console from Microsoft, built as a successor to the Xbox 360. The Xbox One was officially announced at a press conference on May 21st, 2013. Microsoft had intended to implement strict controls over games resale and DRM controls, but later reversed its decision due to public backlash. It is the third home console in Microsoft's Xbox series and launched on November 22nd, 2013 in North America, in Kingdom, Spain, Mexico, Italy, Ireland, Germany, France, Canada, Brazil, Austria, New Zealand, and Australia. The release was delayed until 2014 in 8 European countries: Belgium, Denmark, Finland, Netherlands, Norway, Russia, Sweden, and Switzerland, due to various localization issues. Rise of Nintendo. The Wii U is a game console from Nintendo, built as a successor to the Wii. It was mentioned in a statement released by Nintendo on April 25th, 2011 that the company was planning to reveal it during E3 2011 and that playable console units will be present as well, codenamed Project Cafe. It was officially introduced on June 7, 2011 with its final name, the Wii U. The console released in North America on November 18th and in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand on November 30th, 2012, officially starting the 8th generation of video game consoles. Features a new console include HD graphics support on Wii only and a controller. The Wii U gamepad, which features a 66.2-inch touchscreen built in that can be used as a second screen, providing added info and interactivity, such as asymmetric gameplay. That the Wii U discontinues backward compatibility support for GameCube discs and controllers, which also means that Wii games that support the GameCube controller will instead require use of an alternate controller scheme, such as the Classic controller when playing on the Wii U. The Wii U also has its own more conventional controller, the Wii U Pro controller, which resembles an Xbox 360 controller in form and function. That is compatible with most Wii U and Virtual Console titles, but not original Wii games. The console is available in two sets. The basic set includes the Wii U console with 8 GB of internal memory, the Wii U gamepad, an AC adapter, an HDMI cable, and the Wii center bar. The deluxe set includes all of the items from the basic set, but also has 32 GB of internal memory instead of only 8 GB, and is bundled with a gamepad charging cradle, stands for gamepad and the console, as well as Nintendo Land. The Wii was met with slow consumer adoption, with low sales primarily credited to a weak lineup of launch titles, third-party support, and marketing reasons. Wii U production officially ended in January of 2017. On March 3rd, 2017, Nintendo released a new flagship home console called the Nintendo Switch. Although the Wii U has noted for pioneering several concepts that were refined in the Switch, the Nintendo Switch software supports online gaming through standard internet connectivity, as well as local wireless and hoc connectivity with other Switch consoles. Nintendo Switch games and software are available on both physical flash-based ROMs cartridges and digital distribution via Nintendo eShop. The system does not use region locking. The Nintendo Switch competes on the console gaming market with contemporaries being Sony's PlayStation 4 and Microsoft's Xbox One. Now let's look at the handheld 8th generation. Nintendo 3DS is a handheld video game console, revealed at Nintendo's E3 2010 press conference. Released in Japan in February 2011, it was released worldwide. Less than a month later, it used auto-stereoscopic 3D to produce a 3D effect on screen. On January 27, 2011, the PlayStation Vita, codenamed the Next Generation Portable or NGP, during development was announced. It was a 5-inch OLED multi-touch front screen and a rear touchpad, 2 analog sticks, 3G and Wi-Fi connection, 6-axis control, and 3-axis Electronic Compass. It was released on December 17th in Japan and has been released on 15th for Station Manual and on February 22nd, 2012 in Europe. 3G/Wi-Fi Vita, Release Bundle Vita, or the Wi-Fi only Vita, as well as in the Middle East, Australia, and North America. So he's looking at have up to 40 launch titles for their Western release and up to 100 within the release window. Nintendo Switch Lite is a handheld game console by Nintendo. It was released on September 20, 2019. As a handheld-only version of Nintendo, it plays most of the same games as the original Nintendo Switch and comes in 5 colors. The Nintendo Switch Lite was unveiled on July 10, 2019 and was known in development by its codename MH. We got all the consoles of the 8th generation, as you can see here. And thank you for watching. Goodbye. What's your favorite game franchise?